Hey everybody, it's your Uncle Bear. So, I'd like to share with you one of my old memories of boot camp when I was in the Navy. When I first went to boot camp, now my mouth has got me in more trouble over the years than you could possibly imagine. Okay, you might be able to imagine. I'm kind of outspoken, kind of a smart ass. Typical Gen X, right? So when I went into boot camp, for the first probably 2 weeks of boot camp, what they would do is when the last man sat down at the chow hall, when the last man in your company sat down, they told you to get up and everybody would start going towards the garbage cans to scrape your plates off. So that last guy that sat down, he's eating on his way to the garbage can. I mean, it was that, So one day we're standing in line at the chow hall, and Petty Officer Jenkins, the company commander, was walking alongside the line. Anyway, I said, "Excuse me, sir," I said, "I think as a fellow taxpayer you'll agree with me that it's, all this food is going to waste when you have us go scrape it into the garbage can." I said, "And really," I said, "I think we would better perform for you if we had, if we were performing on full stomachs, He said, "You're right, Rick." Rick was short for Ricky Recruit. He said, "You're right, Rick." He says, "When we get back to the house," he said, "we'll talk about it." So it was business as usual. We still, scraped our plates early and all that. Anyway, we got back to the house, the barracks, and everybody got at general quarters in front of their bunks. And he told me to go in his office and wait for him there. So I went in his office, and kind of leaned up against his desk, and he said, "Oh, no, Rick." Came in, he said, "No, Rick," he says, "let me get that for you." And he took the desk and he pushed it up against the wall, and he hopped up on it, sat on it. He said, "All right, Rick, drop, let's talk." And I don't know how long I was in there. I would venture to say it was a minimum of a half hour, 45 minutes. I was sweating pretty good by the time that talk was done. But yeah, I think he really valued my opinion, to be honest. We still kept doing the same shit for for the first 2 weeks of boot camp, but yeah, it was good times. That was real boot camp back then, though. He was a bad dude, that guy. I don't know. They had to pick those two company commanders of ours, drill instructors, if you will. They had to, it was like a psychological warfare on the recruits. And what I mean by that, Petty Officer Jenkins was a big black guy, very intimidating, and he had those I want to say, I call them Arkansas eyes, where one goes that way and one goes that way. And it's really hard not to concentrate on that when he's right in your face, barking at you, And then the other one was about 5'3", 5'2" or 3, came up to about here. And he had like 2 or 3 teeth in his whole mouth, and when he'd holler at and a mustache, and when he'd holler at you, his whole mouth would just kind of distort all over the place, I laughed every single time, because he reminded me of, a small dog, that was getting really old and had lost all its teeth. That's what he kind of reminded me of. And, I remember him, Petty Officer Skiffin was his name. And I remember one day, he asked me, they teach you how to fold fold your clothes a certain way, you know, in boot camp. And anyway, Petty Officer Skiffin, I had folded my shirt the wrong way or something, you know, and he asked me if I had a learning disability. I said, no. I kind of chuckled and I said, no, sir. And he said, well, I have a learning disability. And I said, no shit, huh? Anyway, yeah, I sweated a lot that day too. But he got right up in my face one time. I remember him getting right up in my face one day and he said, you fucking turd. And I just busted out laughing because it was hilarious the way his mouth distorted. He, like I say, he comes up to about here on me, and I'm not a tall guy myself, you know, and it just cracked my shit up. Anyway, it was good times. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was good times. Have a great day. Be safe, everybody.